This is the No Stroke Podcast with your co-hosts David Dansereau and Michael Garrow, helping you to support and thrive in life after stroke. Their podcast is designed for educational and community support purposes only and should not replace medical treatment and guidance of your own health professional team.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 64 of the No Stroke Podcast. My name's Dave Dansereau. I'm here with my co-host, Mike Garrow, on the day before Veterans Day. Mike, welcome.
Welcome, David, and that's happy, Veterans Day to all who are listening. I know it's a especially important day for you with your father who served. So
it absolutely is, Mike, and he's always over by my shoulder. He's no longer with us, but as you see, I'm a little bit more dressed up than usual today, and wearing his clip. But certainly, we stand behind all our veterans who served, and it's an important weekend. So depending on what time we get this out, it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And mentioning my dad at the beginning, it's going to relate back into the foundation that he gave me in what he did as a Mason, and everything starts from the ground up. And when we talk nutrition today, which is going to be the topic, I'll try to tie that in. But
building blocks, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, Mike.
And
so
it doesn't, again, to that path, right? Like, and I really excited just for your fit today, David. You're looking very spiffy, and I could tell the product in your hair is exceptional today.
Is it?
It looks,
Thank you.
It looks, the shine, normally I'm the one with the shine because of the bald head, but your shine is immaculate today.
Wardrobe and makeup really work their magic with me today, the lighting. So let's dive into this. All kidding aside, this is a very important topic to me. So with that said, we're approaching Thanksgiving as well, Mike. We're going to probably get an episode in before that, hopefully. But I do have to ask you, there's a bit of debate at around my household around this time, and we're going to be talking nutrition. So, what's your take on mushrooms and stuffing?
I thought you were just going to leave it at mushrooms. I was going to say that's a whole nother. Okay. That could be a whole nother episode. But
all right.
Mushrooms and stuffing. I mean, I'm a fan of both. To be honest.
Okay. If I have a chance to answer the magic wand question, I'm going to bring that back in at the end. So remember that question, okay? So
stuffing, mushrooms and stuffing. Okay, yeah. All right. You're going to
bring tie into stroke recovery. Hopefully, I'll paint that picture entirely.
All right. Yeah, and just to tee things up here before we jump into the news, right? This is going to be, as we spoke about in our last episode, just David and I here. David's going to be bringing his expertise with nutrition to the table here for us to really dive into a topic that gets tucked under the rug a lot, right? And has such an important, impact on a person's goals for prevention of stroke, as well as in their ability to recover post-stroke. So with that, again, there's not going to be a special guest other than David today to really give us the education. So just wanted to kind of line things and make sure everybody's, understanding that the it's like we haven't done many episodes like this, right, where we don't have a guest. So just want everybody to be clear, but it's going to be a good one. So let's quickly go over, in the news. What do you got for us, David?
First, great accomplishment by the voice of our intro of our show, Carolyn Goggin, and her husband, Travis. As you know, we had them on twice. Carolyn went solo, second time with her husband, preparing for the Boston Marathon. This past weekend, Mike, in New York, they both finished the New York City Marathon with Teddy's team. So high five.
Kudos. Yeah, it's one of the, the big five or whatever it is in terms of all the, they've run Boston, now New York. I mean, I know it was much better weather. I was there for the marathon last year, and it was muggy, maybe like, I think it was like 75 degrees or something. I was at the 25-mile marker, right as you're going up the hill towards Central Park. And yeah, I had you in my mind a lot that day, David. I was like, how, like just the agony in some people's faces. I was like, and then,
Well,
then the joy as well, right? Like,
then the joy.
but yeah, kudos, Caroline and Travis for doing that for a great cause, I'm sure. So,
And how
yeah,
about for you?
for me, a company that I know, David, you and I have talked about, we haven't highlighted yet on the show, but they've been doing some great work in the stroke space, really around like digital care plans and supporting patients in their recovery journey. A company called Can Do Health, which is a subsidiary of Imperative Care. All right, there we go. I got it. They recently, and they've been at this for a number of, maybe like 2-3 years now. Friend of the show, Lauren Sheehan. She's a clinical lead for them. But I think when you look at that model, right, it's so nuanced right now. It is proving a little difficult to get injected into the care pathways, through hospital systems or even payers, but they're progressing, and hopefully we'll see that come to fruition one day. But they've recently announced a partnership with Neurolutions, who we had on early in the show, or early, like one of the probably first 10, if not, I would say like first 10 episodes. We'll link it into the show notes, but they are a robotics company that supports strength and spasticity management, using a robotic device that attaches onto the arm for stroke patients. So Can Do is part of the partnership. Can Do will help kind of the overall kind of clinical care management of that program, and help identify patients who are eligible for Neurolutions device. So yeah, exciting progress being made in front of just overall better support for stroke survivors out there. And it sounds like we'll have them on. Chat with Lauren, I think we're going to have her on as well as one of their stroke ambassadors in the new year. So excited for that, and stay tuned.
And not to undermine all the other accomplishments in what you just mentioned there, but for me, tops in the news was your story, along with Meg, your fiance. Great story and highlight piece done by the American Heart Association. Thank you, Mike and Meg, for putting yourselves out there in your families and talking about your experiences and what brought you to be here today with me as well, really, to be doing this now.
Yeah.
And so thank you. That side is very seldom shown. And I'm thankful to the American Heart, American Stroke, but I'm also very grateful for the two of you. And I've said it, like, let's drop the Travis and Taylor, and the hashtag Mike and Meg is in it for me, because I really, you guys are the real deal, and I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, Meg's got it. I'm not concerned about the competition with Meg and Taylor, but me and Travis, I've semi-private, I've been getting back in the weight room, but I think Travis got me beat. But hey, well, I appreciate the kind words, David, and yeah, it was a great opportunity to share our story. It's something special and unique how stroke has brought us together. As I've mentioned, Meg's mom had a stroke when she was about early 30s. Meg was a young child as well. So we just, I think the moral of that story was just like, obviously just how special it was that stroke brought us together. But I think the other lens of it is like, and what we tried to have as a message from it was really like the importance of connecting with others, right? Because I went one route as a caregiver where I just dove in and wanted to learn everything and be connected and try to support through advocacy. Where Meg, not to say it's the wrong way to do it, but she just thought she was alone and, didn't go out and kind of figure out that there are a lot of others out there like us. So again, just really stress the importance, obviously for caregivers and survivors alike, just the power of connection, especially those who are, your same age groups, and just being able to share stories and understand that you're not alone. So yeah, thanks for that, David. So let's get into this one, man. Again, it's going to be the David show. If you're watching on YouTube, the guy's got a whiteboard behind him amongst, the other, things that are happening in the background, but he's ready. He's got a suit, he's got a shirt and tie on, as he mentioned his father's tie clip. So he's going to deliver. And this one is an important one, because we're talking about nutrition. Again, they always say, like, you are what you eat, right? And it holds true in stroke recovery, as food could be a powerful ally in that healing process, right? So in this episode, we're really going to be exploring the role of using food as medicine in stroke recovery, as well as prevention, and how a holistic approach to nutrition could support the healing journey. So, we've talked a lot about David's background as a PT, right? And how that has really helped. And we've touched on it, but you and I certainly have talked through how you had to hack your way through therapy and really build your foundation because of what you knew within PT, and having that background as a physical therapist gave you the advantage to not have to rely on other PTs and the health community who you probably ran out of insurance dollars with, right? So you couldn't access that. But you also have, and kind of your first love, and your first rooted education was as a registered dietitian. So again, as David's kind of gone through his career and where he is now, is, I think, as he'll start to speak to here, his first love is nutrition, dietetics. Like, how does that connection of the body and what you consume blend together? So David's background, he has a bachelor's of science degree in nutrition dietetics from the University of Rhode Island, and then went on to complete his master's of science in physical therapy. And we haven't mentioned it too many times, but he's also a best-selling author. And that book is really what we're going to be diving into today, and some of the core foundational work of what's called body and balance. And again, the key objectives and things that you need to be thinking about as a stroke survivor, or as a caregiver, or even part of the person's care team to support healthy behavior focused on nutrition. So David, for the listeners, let's go back. You're a young kid growing up in Rhode Island, probably making bad decisions when you're a teenager, as we all do. But you decided to go down this path of becoming a registered dietitian, right? So what was that decision for you? What was your why as to taking this route and kind of going with it?
Fantastic question, Mike. And first, thanks for letting me be on the other side of the microphone. And I'm honored to be able to share my expertise. So yeah, great question. So, as leaving high school, going into college, was very much shaped in my senior year in high school by getting more interested in nutrition from a sport performance standpoint, and how it was able to, modifying my diet, able to make me a better athlete. So going into my first year of college, I had ideas of what I wanted to be. I was very much shaped early on by a book by Rachel Carson called Silent Spring, and thought I was going on the environmental science side of things, but it was housed in the Department of Nutrition. And when promoting this episode, I made a post about my true love was nutrition. I was in that department and noticed a lot of good-looking girls going into this classroom, And I was in environmental science with a lot of farm and turf grass management. And I started to see more and more girls going in and still undeclared as a major. And I said, I can see what that classroom is about, because there was probably 4 girls to every guy. And if you know anything about dietetics, it's definitely still today, there are more males in the profession. But um, long story short, I started taking more nutrition classes. And my true love of nutrition, I also met my wife, who we we both became dietitians early on, and so she's still my true love, still happily together. And although we've both advanced our careers, I spent my first 7 years as a dietitian. I want to talk a little bit more about that, how it formed my foundation for what I'm doing today. And my wife
I-
also went on and advanced her degree as a nurse. So
Amazing. And so what I got out of that, David, you wanted to pick up chicks and you needed a 6-pack for it. So yeah, didn't know how to eat, right?
you nailed it. Yeah, yeah, one line, that's all you need. And absolutely.
Well, that's a great story, and I'm sure our listeners, again, that's something, we learned something new, and I'm glad we were able to make that connection for you guys. So now let's take it. You've graduated graduated college. You have this RD degree. You've met your beautiful fiance at the time, or was it still
Yeah.
fiance Lisa? And bring us to like that early stage of your career. What were some of the first roles that you had?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it really shaped, again, what I'm doing today. I had a unique opportunity to be in a dual role in my first job. I had done clinical affiliations prior to my first job, getting my advanced, my advanced, my training. So my first role was at the Miriam Hospital here in Providence, and I worked both in inpatient clinical, seeing patients on the floor before they were discharged, medical, interventions and diets, special diets. I also had the opportunity to work in the behavioral medicine department on the research side and on the intervention side in a workplace or corporate wellness environment. So I saw the acute side when everything was fast paced, quick. When a dietitian would usually get called in, it was very limited. It was usually the last provider that had access to the patient. In many cases, they had to be signed off if there was a nutrition concern, that they couldn't go home without seeing the dietitian in many cases, whatever the particular case might be. But it always struck me that that wasn't the best learning environment, because I'd have 10 minutes with the patient, and they'd be trying to navigate their ride home and making sure and I was like, yeah. And you hand them a copy of their diet, and they seldom would follow it. But on the other half of my role, I was out working in corporations. We were doing something really innovative early stage. We were actually looking at addressing where patients are in their, or worksite workers are in their readiness to change. And we were looking at nutrition. We were looking at exercise. I had my minor in exercise science at the time, so I was really excited about this role. And we were looking at smoking cessation. And we were actually staging, and this was funded by the National Cancer Institute. We're looking at reducing healthcare costs through the worksite. We're actually staging programs and building courses and programs around where that person was in their readiness to change. And today I've worked that into the book and the way I educate patients both on the movement and nutrition side. But it laid a foundation around the potential for technology, but also the potential for awareness, and awareness of where an individual is and their willingness or readiness to approach them with the particular behavior that may be putting them at risk. So,
Yeah, it's interesting you speak of behavior, right? Like, I mean, that's such a core jumping stick to change any habit, right? Whether it's starting exercise, reading, whatever it is, right? It's like, what's that spark, right? Like what you're gonna, and it's core part of like AA, right? Or any rehab, right? It's like, hey, you need to realize like you want to be willing to do this, right? So, we know, like, as we're speaking to a community here involved in stroke, right? Like, many stroke survivors understand that weight, like, being overweight, diabetic, like, has a high risk to either cause a second stroke or your first, right? But overall, again, kind of going back into those early roles and, doing some of this behavioral analysis, what was the big, what was the problem then? And like, do you see it has gotten any better? Because if we look at the numbers, like, especially in America, right, the chart's only going up in terms of the amount of people, especially even at a younger age now, that are pre-diabetic, and just overall, carrying too much weight. So, like, what were some of these things that stuck out to you in terms of the big issue here when we talk about nutrition?
Yeah, and in many ways, that hasn't changed. And fast forward to where we are today, and I do talk about this in my course extensively. But knowing the reality versus the hype that's in front of us in the media, everything you see is the quick fix, and going back to the fundamentals and the things that got us where we are today on the national numbers around what you just mentioned, diabetes, pre-diabetes, those numbers, and I read about them in my book, they're trending in the wrong way, and they're starting younger and younger and younger. And when we talk about it at the foundation, it's the lack of nutrition knowledge and IQ. I frame up this model in, there's a reason I have the board behind me, but when we talk about, there's a reason I talk about my book in the title, Body and Balance. It's about knowing energy in, energy out, and then looking at diving deeper into that, of an awareness of where you may be out of balance. And for many people, when we talked about where they go wrong in terms of gravitating, I've been in this long enough to see fad diets come, go in all varieties. And I've seen patients that come to me that don't know the basic language of nutrition, because we're not taught that, really. I chose to study it, so I have a deeper understanding. There's a lot of discussion around why aren't we teaching this earlier on, also in medical school. I advocate for that, for the rehab professionals to bring this into the equation when they're working with patients. So it's really the nutrition data around what we can be doing differently. It's there, the data now. Generally, to just look at science, the science of diet has certainly evolved over time. And I'll give you one clear example that shaped kind of. I was fortunate, Mike, to go out to the Pritikin Center early on in my training. And the Pritikin Center at the time was state-of-the-art, West Coast, someone who was reversing heart disease through lifestyle change. The person closest to that now, going into the 90s and 2000s, was Dean Ornish. And he has a diet that is actually still used by the Mayo Clinic. But at the time, the idea of a direct intervention with lifestyle change and diet was sort of unheard of at the time. And I get to spend a day at the Pritikin Center and see how structured nutrition and exercise could actually reverse disease. And folks that would go in with 4 out of 5 modifiable risk factors for heart disease and stroke would come out and not entirely eliminate their medications, but have lowered their blood pressure enough, their weight, improve their body composition enough that they were no longer a surgical candidate. They did not have to have a bypass surgery. So to me, that was like, wow, we can do this through controlling and educating and helping shape behavior change to what we put in our bodies and ourselves. It's like the most fun when we talk about neuroplasticity and all these things that drive recovery. It starts at the neuron level, at the cellular level. And it's amazing to me today in 2023 that we are not adding that in as part of every single discharge plan. Or and if we want to really roll back disease, let's start going way, way, way upstream and when we start talking about this.
Yeah. And I think yeah, there is that power and there is that scientific backing of food as medicine, right? And that to your points, right? Like how it could help manage blood pressure, cholesterol, and lower the chances of, de-risking yourself for some of these diseases and also, reversing it. We see companies like, Omada Health and these many like diabetes prevention programs that's all around behavior change and really focused on that diet. But I think when we go back to Lee Schwam's episode and his magic wand, which kind of sparked, us wanting to take a deep dive here, it was also food insecurity, right? Like that is a major issue just with, I think, there's looking at some of the data here. It's like, from what they're saying, nearly 800 million people live every day with hunger, food insecurity, right? And what's the easiest option? Ramen, like high sugar, high salt, the fast food chain that's right down the road. Like, that's some of, I think, just the systemic issues, right, that play into this. But I think what we really want to focus on here, and as we kind of move in to the next part of this discussion, David, is like, what could be done with what you have, right? Like, again, there might be that lack of, financial security to be able to really, like pay a full-time dietitian, but there's really simple things that you could do as well, right? So
Absolutely.
we're going to dive into that. And I think before we do that though, I think this is really going to resonate for listeners, because you were put in a situation as a stroke survivor, right? Like you suffered your stroke, 39 years old, and you were, again, like everybody else who's kind of gone through it, right? Dropped off the face of a cliff. And you had the ability to kind of hack your way, and we'll cover it next episode in terms of the rehab and the mobility aspect. But let's talk through your experience post stroke when it came to nutrition, right? What were you focused on? You mentioned your wife was, a dietitian as well, who then became a nurse. So you had that support as a caregiver to help you. But what would be kind of the key things that played a part of your recovery that you would want to share with our listeners?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And yeah, what I immediately turned to is what I knew, talking at the beginning about performance and nutrition, and saw what that did for me moving through high school into college, the way it was able to kind of transform my body. I had to fall back on that, Mike, and I had to look at, and we've talked about this many times, taking that athlete's mindset about, I know my path to recovery involves physical movement. It involves repetition. It involves those small granular changes in the day-to-day, being able to improve those metrics. So I knew where I wanted to be, where I was. But the foundation for that, from the energy standpoint and the exchange of that energy, started with really peeling back just like I was training for a marathon, I was not going to be training on inferior fuels, junk food, to be able to get optimal performance. The key things that I do this now in practice every day when I try to focus on what folks are doing well. I don't put them on a diet per se, but I look at the big three F's. I look at, number one, fluids. Talked about being able to control and food insecurity and the choices you make. Something as simple as, number one, hydration. If we know that 60 to 80% of the human body, cells, tissues, are water, and that cell function, including mental and physical performance, are directly related to fluid status. You can start simply by knowing, am I dehydrated? Thirst itself is not a good predictor of dehydration. Usually you're already dehydrated when you feel thirsty. Many survivors, including myself initially, on medications to reduce risk that also further make us more prone to being dehydrated. So energy levels, and some of the energy levels that we feel are the indirect insult to the brain, but some of them, just like an athlete, going back to the analogy, and you've probably felt this too, if you get dehydrated, your performance drops immediately. A marathon runner who gets dehydrated, that can limit them being able to finish. Number one, hydration. Easy enough. Most folks come to me drinking 2 to 3 cups maybe a day. And then they have their carbonated, their coffees, all that can add in, but most folks are dramatically underhydrated. That provides the role of something as simple, and I'm going to go to the whiteboard, Mike. I warned you. Classes of nutrients. Water, most people don't think as a number one class of nutrient, right? You have proteins, carbs, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water. I put it number one for that reason. It's the easiest thing you can do to directly impact your body at the cellular level, is to stay hydrated.
So again, was this something that like your doctor was telling you post, or obviously you had that education, right? So you knew, but is any of this, like, to your point, right? It's not really discussed as much at that discharge phase. So,
No,
that was number one to you though, again, for your own sake, you kind of realize like, hey, I need to up my fluid intake.
Yeah, absolutely. So carbohydrates. When we look at the other, I said there were 3 F's, right? The other 2 of those 3 are pretty easy to think about. When I say fluids, then I look at fats and fiber. Fats meaning most people, when they look and dive into their diet, when we talk about brain health, when we talk about cellular function, most individuals don't look at the quality of the fats in their diet. Most people that come to me, and even in the acute stages of stroke, I was looking at optimizing the omega type fats. Most folks that are not looking at that mix really need, I call it an oil change, just like your car needs. And we can dive deeper into
Just give us, like, what are some examples, right? Because there's good fats and there's bad fats, right? So give us some examples, right? Like, what are these good fats and fiber sources of fiber that people could be kind of considering?
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So great. Right. When we talk about omega-3s, that people get confused because you're looking at where they come from first. So your best sources of omega-3s are, there's different variants of the omegas, but if you keep it simple, your omega-3s that are coming from fish oils. You can get omegas from nuts and seeds. You can get omegas from other nutrients or other parts of this equation that we're going to talk through. But when folks think of omega-3s, flax, for example, chia. So when I talk walnuts, these are all, there's a difference between EPA and AHA in terms of what is most metabolized. And in the resources at the end, I'm going to provide everyone with a sheet that will actually break down those top sources of omegas. On the fiber side, each of these could be its own separate lecture. And that's why I built this out over a 5-module course. And I talk deeper about it in my book. But on the omega side, if you compare that to, you hear good and bad fats, most of your highly processed packaged items are not, very seldom, the omega-3 variety. They're usually the saturated fat, the processed. You hear the term trans fats, bad fats. But on the fiber side, that's something as simple as looking at how your body digests food. There's soluble and insoluble fiber. They both have their roles in kind of health and disease. And one of them provides energy. The other one actually provides both to help you. For example, we talked about medicines. Water and fiber, a high percentage of folks that come out of the hospital after stroke with decreased mobility, something we don't talk about is constipation. They're not moving around. They're not eliminating their, because of this decreased mobility and because their diet might not be optimized. Those two go hand in hand for me, because that's something that is simple to think about at the beginning. And a lot of medications also slow down that process.
And again, just like some sources of fiber, right? Like what's it? Shopping
Yep.
at your local
So you
stop
look at-
shop. What are you getting off the shelf?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be your high end. Like something as simple as oats and grains and whole wheat, as opposed to your simple. Think of a lot of the white simple flours, simple sugar. Your higher fiber foods, your whole grains are going to often be vibrant in color. Fruits and vegetables, great source of fiber. So, when we talk about diets, do I have one in particular? There's one that kind of checks all these boxes too, and we can talk about that a little bit later. And there's some good science behind it. But that's, you'll be amazed, Mike, how many people, when I ask them how much fiber they get, they have no clue. And when I say the American diet in my book is sad, just to give you a kind of a case in point, this provides the general population, and then you drill it down to the stroke survivor who may be at further risk, is most individuals for health and disease and blood sugar control alone, that's the other part of the fiber equation and complex carbs. Most Americans get less than 10 grams of fiber per day. We really need to be 2 times, 3 times that, 25 to 35 grams of fiber. But this is a true case.
Yeah. And just as like a bowl, again, like I think the big issue, like not a big issue, right? But like, unless you have a caretaker or you're kind of good at, like, I mean, I'm not sitting there when I, have my bowl of, oats in the morning or something, like measuring everything out, right? But like I have friends who are like dedicated in the weight room, right? And they track all their macros, like there's certainly that level that you could go with it. But I mean, give us a sense, like, for 10 grams of fiber in a diet, right? Is that a small bowl of oatmeal in the morning, or, some flax seeds? Like what's
your morning mixed meal, and it kind of follows the sort of a more of a Mediterranean, you hear kind of like eating like a Greek or eating more Mediterranean type foods that fit under this umbrella of a certain macro mix, but also that are naturally higher in fiber. So if you have a bowl of cereal, whether it be, a whole grain cereal, you have a hot cereal where it's oats, whether it be steel cut or just, anything added on top of that is going to also add in. So a sliced apple, a handful of blueberries. And then you want to look at, we're not really going to dive. When I look the next phase, I probably will talk about this when we talk about the exercise, the protein, and the things that come in with that. But a mixed meal, it's not hard to do. And it's, unfortunately, the diet patterns that I often see is we wait way too long in the day to try to catch up. And we do that with water too. Folks will say, I don't like to do these things. I know I should, but then I try to catch up at the end of the day. think about starting your day front loading. First thing you get up in the morning, we talk about simple tip, first thing with water, rehydrate. 16 ounces. There's 16 ounces, because if you're looking at the whole day, you want to be getting about 8 to 10 glasses, and that's just to support your daily movement, not any intentional activity. It would be much higher if we're exercising as well. So front load, get your morning cereal, get your use those are the fuels you're going to be doing to, if you're going to rehab later in the day. If you show up on an empty tank, your output during that rehab session, whether you're doing it home on your own, you've been discharged, you're trying to manage that, or you're showing up at clinic for rehab.
Yeah.
You know,
And you make so many great points here, David. And I think, like, as we look at these 4Fs, right, like, again, fluids, fats, fiber, there's things that also stick out to me, right? Like early on, you mentioned small change, like making these small changes, like drinking a glass of water in the morning, right? Like, it's something that I've built into my routine, but, for those just starting, like, pour that glass, like pour it the night before, right? Have it there on the counter when you wake up in the morning, and it's just the first thing that you're doing, right? And that's again, if you're pouring a 12, 16 ounce glass, like, that's right. Like, you're starting the day on that right path. And I think when we talk around a lot of this, right, building these foundations to a balanced diet, it's a big part of this is moderation as well, right? And again, a big, like, you look at the American diet and you look at these buffets out there, and just like, the social pressures of like these big gourmet dinners, like Thanksgiving, right? Moderation, like, it's, who's eating, these massive plates. Um, this could kind of trickle on it. And I don't, what I want to do here, David, is spend some time really talking around your course and what you provide, and how people could take a next step and kind of, learn from you and with you, and, the online course that you're offering, for people to continue this. But I think the initial kind of 4Fs, I think that's a great foundation for folks. Again, this could be a 10-part episode, right? We could continue here, but let's take a quick break, and I think when we get back, we'll touch on really, like, how you bring clients through your course and what you have to offer. So let's
super.
go.
Our goal today in discussing nutrition and stroke prevention and recovery is simply to create awareness and perhaps ignite a spark with the knowledge that making simple changes in behaviors can have a big impact in bringing your body back into balance. Poor diets lead to abnormal inflammation and are often the root cause of accelerated aging and almost all chronic diseases, including increasing stroke risk. The good news is you can begin to tame inflammation and reverse this decline by what you put on your plate. The 3 Fs we began to discuss today so far are a great place to start. In part 2 of today's episode, I'm going to share more on my new Achieve Balance course and provide you with a few more tip sheets and resources to increase your nutrition skill power. I hope you stay tuned as we jump back in and close out this episode.
All right, and we're back here with the also spiffy looking David Dansereau. So we covered the first half here, really looking at the root cause of poor nutrition, right? And what some steps are, some simple kind of what you called the 3 Fs, right? So fluids, fats, and fibers, and how people could build those into a healthy diet. And I think that's just such a simple and important takeaway from this episode. But if people are interested to kind of learn more, take a next step, we do want to speak to the work that you do outside of the podcast and outside of your main role within PT consulting, and that's both coaching and then offering a online course through Achieve Balance. So let's speak to that briefly. Like, bring me through if I'm interested in joining, right? Like, what's that experience like? Bring me through kind of your steps and what people could expect from taking your course.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Yeah. So all my present clients, from the time I wrote my first book back in 2015, all my clients that come on, they have access to that because they know if they're working with me on the nutrition, on the exercise and the rehab side, I weave in the nutrition. It's just the way I practice. I can't do it without, and that is multiplied anytime I work with someone with a neurological insult, whether it be a stroke, Parkinson's, multiple diet, and the foundation has to be built into the equation. And I realized at the beginning we talked about at discharge, it can't be just a flash in the pan, one handout, you won't use it. So the way I built this, my book is also pretty hefty. My book is almost 285 pages. I realized in today's 3-second attention span that I needed to turn this into more digestible sound bites. My course is based off the foundations of my book. Nutrition is a science, so it changes. So in the last 7 years, things have evolved and changed in nutrition. We now have a whole new generation of miracle weight loss drugs that everyone's talking about the pros. I'm pulling back the reins because I've seen this go this way before when I was first became a dietitian. So the course, what you see behind me is something I reference all the time, the energy balance equation. We look and break down all of these. We talked about the simple things to start, the 3 F's today. You could talk for hours about any one even nutrient or vitamin or mineral. We didn't get into supplements today. I talk about that in my course. So it's a 6-module course is being built into a full platform. And what I want to do is take someone through the process in the course virtually to how they would be working with me if they were working one-on-one with me. So there is a coaching element that is soon to follow, but I want to be able to scale this knowledge, and I want to be able to bring more awareness and make it more affordable. And for today, and for all our listeners, anyone in our Stroop community, the course essentially is closed right now because it's getting ready to be commercialized. In December, it will be a paid course. My group that just beta tested the course, I'm digesting all the feedback, but I want to make available the resource list and even the replay for the Foods That Fit module to anyone who reaches out to us via our website after, today's, we'll put the links in the show notes as well for that. But I also want to make a call to action, and maybe this goes in line with bringing it back to the very beginning question, or maybe it's a magic wand answer to what I think needs to change about how we address nutrition in the care pathways, is that I want to encourage all our rehab providers to at least put this on your radar when you are talking, even if it's not specific to a stroke rehab pathway, to bring up nutrition, to bring up simple tips like we talked about today. Hey, what have you had since before you started to come into clinic today? What have you done to fuel your workout or recover and give your body chance to recover with optimal? Don't go home and not address that part of the whole picture. So the course and book can complement each other, but the course is really where I want individuals to really break this down, just like in learning modules. And that's what I've done in the course. So it's not a handout right before you're leaving at discharge. It's action steps that will hold you accountable, because when you go through the module, you're not going to the next module unless you've completed the foundation module of discovering your why, looking deeper dive into the health and gut, looking at Foods That Fit. And then when we talk in our next session about the exercise side, that's where those modules come in, and we're going to talk about that in another session. But if I had a chance to answer the magic wand question, I would say, in relation to, we need to start way upstream. Diet is not a one size fit all. I don't even like the term diet in itself because it's a negative connotation. But when I talk about maximizing performance and maximizing potential, we have to peel down to the foundation of where does that energy come from that fuels recovery. It comes from providing balanced nutrition and nourishment to be able to actually do the work that drives change.
That's well said, David. And, I think, that you're offering a kind of giving these resources to communities is super kind, will be beneficial. And yeah, we really encourage folks to reach out, whether that's to us, social, via the website, and get your hands on these, because it's important, and there's, little things that you could do. And it's all around, again, taking that first step, small changes that'll really see a benefit for you. And I hope you've kind of taken this in, as we approach the holiday season, and you're going to be considering a change, right? Don't wait till the new year. Let's start now.
Yeah.
And as we kind of wrap this episode up, thank you, David. It was fun. I like this. I think people learned a little something more about you today. I'm curious. We need to go back to, you said you were going to pull this through and through with the stuffing reference.
Yeah.
What's going on with that?
As a recipe, as part of the whole rehab equation, there's not one pathway that works all the time. You have to try, just like making a master recipe. Some ingredients aren't going to work for you. We have this discussion going on our table right now, coming to the holiday. Some of us did want to keep the old stuffing recipe that has the mushrooms in it. There's others, now that my kids are not little, they're at the adult table, they're becoming a little more vocal about what their likes and their preferences. We all have food preferences. Nutrition is a science, it's evolving. There's room for multiple stuffing recipes. There's room in recovery for different thoughts and ideas, but you got to find out what works for you. What do you like? I like mushrooms in my stuffing. I do.
There we go. All right. We've learned it. David likes mushrooms in his stuff. As long as it's got gravy, I'm gravy.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a fun one, David. All these references, everything that we've called out, will be in the show notes, and check out the nostrokepod.com website to learn more, get in touch. And yeah, we hope you've found this episode useful. We might get another episode out this month. If not, we'll certainly be planning in December to be releasing an episode focused on exercise, right? So bringing these two together. But who knows? Maybe we'll be up for doing it.
Mike, I'll make a promise here, as long as we get some feedback and we get some engagement, that I would love to put this in. We've been building out our marketplace on the No Stroke Pod, as you mentioned. I'd like to put that in as a special offer for the whole course when it is done, but just for, giving us a thumbs up, giving us some feedback, all those tip sheets that I mentioned, you're going to get the Foods That Fit tip sheet from Module 4. I'll make the Module 4 replay available as part of that, as a link that you can just register for free. And I'm also going to do my inflammation tip sheet as well, which is a big part. We didn't have a chance to dive too deep, but we're going to talk about that on nutrition, on the exercise next side of things too. So I really appreciate being on this side of the mic, and we'll be back with the exercise side soon.
Yeah, in the spirit of giving, David. I love it. All right. Okay. Till next time, folks. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the No Stroke Podcast. I want to leave you with this final food for thought for the listeners in our rehab community. A recent 2023 National U.S. poll of outpatient rehab practices revealed that less than 10% of clinics offer any nutritional guidance or complementary care services. In my own discovery of 10 additional PT practices I surveyed here in New England, not a single clinic asked anything about diet and nutrition on their patients' intake forms. My call to action is this. Let your patients know nutrition is important. Start the conversation and ask them how they are fueling their rehab as part of helping them to optimize outcomes. Connect with dietitians in your community to enhance your offering, and reach out to me if you need more help learning how to make nutrition matter. Thank you.